I can't. All right, y'all. So let's get past the doom and the gloom and the days of
Hey,
reckoning
hey,
and stuff.
hey,
No,
wait,
something
one
real.
sec. Hey, yo, Shonda, I want to say one more time. That
Hmm.
was that was that was crazy what you did. I know y'all probably already talked about it, but to travel those 26 hours to go vote, that was
Oh,
that was that was classic. Yo,
I was gonna make it.
I
Thank you. I
can't
was gonna
stress
make
it
it.
enough. Man, to get all the
Crazy.
way to Georgia. Where is you at?
Yeah,
Saudi Arabia?
yeah, yeah.
Woo!
I was gonna make it come hell
Yes,
or high
ma'am.
water.
Yo, that's classic. Yeah, I had to give you props for that. That's on point.
I know they
Definitely.
talking about Tyler Perry doing that. And I was like, that is nothing compared to what Yoshunda did. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank
And he has the money to just pick up and do whatever. So I was like, nah, she's a real MVP on that one.
Oh man,
Right.
I'm telling you, I was on pins and needles because they had banned international travel for us for a
Ah,
whole week. And because I initially was supposed to leave on the 30th, and they were like, well, we're gonna extend it for another week. And I was like, man, I'm gonna get up out of here. I don't care if I have to sneak across the border and get smuggled out in the country. I'm getting back home. So when I woke up that morning on Sunday, they were like, okay, we lifted the ban. I'm talking about I booked the first thing I could find, and I had to navigate around it because now with that new strain of COVID,
mhm.
the other countries are making people get negative COVID tests, even if you're in transit, even if you're not, your final destination is not that country, even if you're just doing a transfer. So the
Mm.
only country where I didn't have to do it was Germany. So I had to go from Saudi to Germany, from Germany to DC, and then from DC to Atlanta. So yeah, I was tired. I was
Wow.
over it.
Yeah, but that was amazing because I had a friend I had been telling him to vote since the presidential election, and he didn't, but he said he would do it in this one. Woke up the day of, realized he forgot to register, and I was like, I can't stand you.
But
Somebody
we pulled it.
traveled.
We pulled it off. We
I was
pulled
about
it
to
off
say,
though.
yeah. Well, that
Yeah,
was the
that's all that
highlight of the
matters.
week. That was the highlight of the week, definitely, that we pulled that one off.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and then the following day was something else, but that was the highlight.
Yeah, and I hate that it took away from
Mhm.
that historic monumental moment that we got the first black senator from Georgia and the first Jewish senator um into their seats. So
Right.
that kind of overshadowed it, but it doesn't change it. It
It does.
overshadowed it for a bit, but I'm ready for them to get in there safe and work.
Me
you.
too.
DC about to be the
Also,
51st state.
shoot.
All right.
Right, right.
That's
I'm
next. That's
looking
next.
forward to that too. Then they're really gonna be mad when
Puerto
everybody in DC can vote.
Rico. Puerto
Whoa.
Rico.
What's the percentage of the citizens in DC that's black? Isn't it like 80 something
man, man, it's a chocolate city.
percent?
That's
Right.
for sure. Word.
Oh man, that's gonna be interesting. Um, it's crazy because we were enduring all this crazy stuff, and then with chapter 7, and I'm like, here we go with this. Now I was thinking about it because we're coming up on MLK Day, and then Black History Month. And I'm sorry with the background noise, my child is having a meltdown. But I was thinking about how this chapter started out when it was talking about basically how we allowed white people to rewrite Dr. King's whole story and only focusing on that one soundbite of I have a dream. And I really believe what she says with it was saying it erased a lot of the issues of injustice, and then it puts, hey, can you be quiet, little girl, please, thank you, you're too loud. And then how it basically put economic disparity on, made that our burden for us to come up out of. But what do you guys think about how Dr. King's legacy has been basically chopped down into that little tidbit of history?
Honestly, reading it. Oh, go ahead.
Man, I mean, like, once again, this book, it's not, I'm not gonna call it depression. It's just when you learn all these things, and I just think, well, that's what they do. They pick and choose the part that they amplify, and through the course of time, like you said, that's all you hear about is I have a dream. You don't know. Like I said, they ain't even tell you what the name of the march was. You know, you know what I'm saying? It was like, was the March for Freedom or something else? I don't even remember what it was when I was reading it in the previous chapters. But that's what they do. It just diminishes the effect of what was really posted, what he was trying to accomplish, you know. And they never talk about the other speeches that he wrote. I remember when I was in college, we had got a copy of one of his last speeches, which was a testament of hope. And he was ready to go far. He was getting to the point to whereas it's going to take more than just this to get it there. I forgot a lot of the content of it because it's been so long since I read it, but I remember having it, and it was so hard to come by. And I mean, that's what they do though. They diminish a lot of the significance, and it's just more like of a character, not a character, but it's not the whole. You know what I'm saying? It's not giving you the whole essence of what he was really about. Because I used to downplay him too. Because all I thought, especially when I was younger, I'm tired of hearing about I have a dream and all that. But it was a reason why it was done like that to make me feel that way and not want to pursue more information about it. So I'm glad I'm getting a lot of the information that I wasn't privy to early on. So hey.
Jessica, you wanted to weigh in?
No, yeah, I agree. Reading that, I started thinking, I was like, I have believed my entire life that Dr. Martin Luther King ended basically institutionalized racism. Like like laws were created to protect us after the civil rights movement. And as I was reading this chapter, I was like, oh my gosh, like lie after lie after lie that I've been taught. It's just it's well, I mean, it's a lie. And people have been saying that, but you don't really comprehend it because I was like, how does an entire system get you to believe this? And I realized, well, you force us to go to schools. You force a certain curriculum in the schools, and we learned like we learn exactly what you want us to learn. Because I was sitting here thinking, how can over half the country believe the lies of Donald Trump? Well, you know what is what you feed yourself, what you're taught from your parents, who honestly is taught from a system. So, and for white people it might be a little bit different, but yes, I was just like, that's really crazy that you diminish this man's legacy like that, and it's really crazy that we really don't know. Every year for Black History Month, people pick. They say, "Oh, you have to pick a person to talk about." And everybody always picks Dr. Martin Luther King, and sometimes teachers will say, "Yo, you got to pick somebody else." Rosa Parks, the staples in history, and all you know is the snapshots of the big moments they want you to see, but you don't actually see the real work and the real message. And it's just like we can't even teach. How do you even get them to teach that in school so people learn the truth? You really can't. So yeah, it was just kind of eye opening and crazy.
Anybody else?
Yoshunda, what was the I was transitioning from my phone to the laptop. So what was the question again? I know it had something to do with Dr. King and his legacy.
We were just talking about how we felt about them basically cutting down his whole entire legacy to the soundbite of "I Have a Dream." And how did you feel about that?
That was in the book. I didn't get very far into that. But to answer your question, I feel like with anything else, they're only gonna tell. I feel like the system we live in, because it's owned, operated, and controlled by white supremacists, and that they call the shots, they write the books, etc. They're only going to tell you the part of history that they're comfortable with you hearing so that they can have better mind control over you and so that they can minimize, and I'm talking about black people and people that are not white, minimize your advancement and your opportunity for to advance yourself educationally and economically. Because a lot of us know that going through this school system, there was not a whole lot that we learned or that we needed to know by the time we got into the real world. There's such a level of incongruency, and there's such a level of incompatibility between the school and the real world. The school, and I don't want to get too deep into that, but to answer your question, they minimized his legacy to that sound bite because that's the only part of that's the most significant part of black history that they want black people to know, because they only tell you about the Dr. King that was trying to fight for equality and integration, and how he brought his Christian and word of God philosophy, like love your enemies, turn the other cheek, etc. But when he finally came into the realization that none of this is possible without the economic aspect of this, and when he went above and beyond, or when he tried to go above and beyond to fight for economic empowerment, that's when ultimately he was met with his demise. And and like I said, because we don't have the economic and political power structure, we're subjected to the miseducation of those who do. That's why, and that's my overall thought process behind it.
Okay. Anyone else want to fill fill in before we move on to the next?
It just made me think about, how people tend to do that, even with religion, with the Bible, I'm sure with other books of faith, that you take what, is advantageous to you and you turn around to, suit your message. And so with the whole equality message, it kind of lets everyone else off of the hook. Like, hey, we addressed the civil rights, that's gone. So now we don't have to do anything else. You should be able to, stand up and just move forward and let's forget this chapter. But Dr. King was a scholar and he had so many works and so many speeches, but it's a shame that it's distilled to his most famous speech. But again, that's just because I think that's the part that can be most easily manipulated and to other people's advantage, so that there's not other work. They don't feel like there's other work that has to be done. There's not that burden.
Yeah. Until the lion learns the right, every story is gonna glorify the hunter, and that's a fact. Ain't no getting around.
Right. That is true. The next thing, and this is one of the ones that really gets under my skin every time I see it. But the next thing I wanted to touch on was how Ronald Reagan coined the whole welfare queen, um, to make it seem like, as far as poverty in the Black community, that it was because of we lacked work ethic, we were lazy, no family values, not wanting to take care of responsibility. So we know this is something that they have continuously painted the Black community with this broad brush as far as any type of government assistance. How do you think, how can I ask this question? What or I really want to frame this the right way. How do you think Black people in our community have played into that mindset and that trap that they set for us with the whole the welfare queen ideology?
We totally believe it. For me, on a personal standpoint, and you are what you believe, and it's not that we are that. It's just that we, honestly, that's always what I thought. That's all I saw when I was growing up. When I'm looking at even our people, like I was like, man, y'all gotta be better than this. Like, why you always and I never knew about any of this. So I'm just like, so we really put it on ourselves, and when we can't get out of that hole, we get even more depressed. We turn to other things. We start looking like the labels that they make us, and we get in a psyche where we feel like, well, this is what they think I am. This is all I'm ever gonna be. I'm never gonna get out of here. And I feel like that's what happened with that. And we started believing it and perpetuating it and teaching our kids that, if you don't work hard, you're gonna be just like the rest of these lazy people, like, stuff like that. So that's how I feel personally.
All right, can I answer?
Of
I'm gonna take
course.
my bad. I don't know why I asked that question. I'm gonna take a slightly different approach. I just think that when you live in a society that has consistently and repeatedly stolen your hope, that has stolen your dreams, that has no matter what you've tried to do, they have always found a way to put you back into this hole. It's kind of like when you have a bucket, when you have a barrel and you throw a bunch of crabs in it, and no matter if the crab gets at the very top, the other ones pull them down, or if the crab makes it to the top, the barrel master throws him back at the bottom, or he only lets one come out to show him, hey, if he can make it out, you can too. And the rest of them try to get out, but they're trapped within themselves. I think that is the mind game, and that's also the monopoly game that America has and continues to play with Black people. I think that because we don't know who we are, and we don't control the images and the stories that are being told for us to identify who we are, and because history is not told properly for us to know that, we buy and as well as embrace the beliefs that, well, the stories that are being told, and before long we begin to start living according to what we believe, because as scripture says, a person thinketh, so they become. And because we think, and because our people think like the very images and like the very stories they've been told consistently, because we know how powerful the media is, they buy into that. Not having self-knowledge is the root to the very problem that you're asking us about. That's what I think it is. Not necessarily that we are lazy, but because we have consistently had hope and dreams and everything stolen. Imagine living your whole life being born, going through life, experiencing life as a slave, and ultimately dying as a slave. A lot of our people went through that for over 200 years. How many different generations is that? That's what I think it is.
I just want to clarify. I wasn't saying we were lazy. I was saying exactly what you were
I,
saying, but just
I
not as
understand.
polished. Oh,
No, no, no,
okay.
no, no. I understand, Jessica. I understand what you were saying, because like that's why I said I take a slightly different approach, because I agree with it. It's just that there's more to that than what you were ultimately saying. We have to look at the overall
Gotcha.
picture.
Uh, well, when Reagan was talking about that, a lot of people don't know Reagan was the one that said, "Let's make America great again." And what I'm learning from this book, also, is like a lot of this, all this stuff is really regurgitated. They they use pretty much the same tactics over and over. They might have a different process to go about it, but this go back to what Nixon, Goldwater. How they did the community banks. This all
Exactly.
regurgitated. And
Exactly.
and then they use it a different way. It was welfare queens then, and now it's like I forgot what they flip
Socialism.
it around.
It's socialism.
Yeah, but it's basically driving the same thing home. But that's for their constituents, that's poor, because it's a lot of poor. Their constituents, they have a lot of poor constituents, and they try to separate them from us. They try to separate, and that's not the case. Like
Alan?
Alan, I think we lost
oh, I
you.
like Care Act, but I don't want no Obamacare. But that's how they do it. And they got the megaphone. And like you said, people really start believing the lies about the electoral process. And judge after judge after court after court after no, my fault, I take that back. Every state legislature was saying how this was the best, the most looked out for election as far as security wise ever, because of all the scrutiny that's been perpetuated about it being illegal and fraudulent, and now they keep on with that because that's gonna be their main fuel now. They're not trying to get out the vote. They're trying to suppress it. You're gonna probably need a notary public in some places just to vote. You know what I'm saying? And so they got to keep perpetrating that. And that's why those senators wanted to keep bringing up those objections, because that's going to be their next agenda for the next 2 to 4 years. How can we make it even harder to vote? How can we make it even harder to vote? And the other politicians like Tom Cotton was like, don't do it because now you threatening the electoral college. And that's the only way they get voted in. They haven't won a popular vote, I don't think, since Reagan, like 32 years. So he lost to Hillary Clinton in the popular vote.
Right.
Nobody cared about the 60-something million people that voted for her. And they keep screaming about these 74 unheard voices. Oh, I hear them. I hear them every day. I see them every day. They everywhere. So they not like, their voice has always been heard. You know what I'm saying? But they trying to suppress the voices that have finally got a chance to be heard. I mean, this election was phenomenal. You know what I mean? Hey, I'm skeptical. I'm pretty sure we all got similar backgrounds, especially as far as growing up. I'm 51 years old. I don't know. I might be the oldest cat. But like I literally remember when Ronald Reagan on the news talking about welfare queens and George Bush talking about Willie Horton. You know what I mean? And how they use these type of things, and they go a long way because they keep saying it. Like they keep saying conservatives, but they blurring the line between conservative and white supremacists. But as long as they keep saying conservative, you think that it's conservatives, and conservatives need to distance themselves from the far right, that fringe right that they never talk about. It's always the far left or the progressive, radical, communist, socialist, left Virginia, but they don't talk about this radical. These cats, you can't equate a Black Lives Matter march with an insurrection. You know what I mean? It's not even comparable. It's apples and oranges, really. So but this is what they do, and they got the means to manipulate.
Right. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Yeah, Shonda, I was just looking at, Googling the term welfare queen, and it took me to an article on Wikipedia about this lady named Linda Taylor, and just how, she was this one, she had a life of crime, but she actually was a mixed race person, and she was white, Black, Asian. She said she was Asian, Hispanic, Jewish. She named everything basically under the sun, and said that, that was her ethnic identity. But it picked up on the term, that they picked up that she was Black somewhere in there. There was a rumor that she was Black. And so that's how it really started with this lady named Linda Taylor. So I just thought that was interesting, how just that one person, and they even said in the book how welfare fraud was relatively, it wasn't a widespread crime, but they took this one person, this one big case, this one, that was on the far end of the spectrum, and used it and made it a stereotype for all people, for all black women, especially welfare queen.
Because you got that one drop of Black blood, it don't even matter.
Exactly. I look at her picture. She's very fair skinned. She's very fair skinned. And you really can't tell, what she is by looking at her. She looks like a mixed race person. She looks like she could be Hispanic, but her name is Linda Taylor.
Anyone else?
So I think that something that's very interesting about this, and this conversation just reminds me of something that I read earlier this morning, actually on a Twitter feed, but somebody said that one of the reasons that white conservatives have identified so strongly with someone like Donald Trump is because poor white people are fed the belief that they're not poor. they're just temporarily embarrassed millionaires. So they vote for people like Trump who say, well, you know, the Democrats are going to steal from you, immigrants are going to steal from you, Black people are going to steal from you. And they buy into that because of that.
Katie, you still there?
To function is one of the reasons that we are where we are and why people think it's okay to storm the Capitol building. That's all. I just thought it was an interesting thing to think about.
Katie, we missed part of what you were saying. What was the reason you said people felt like it was okay to storm the building, the Capitol?
Oh, yes. They thought that it was okay to storm the Capitol because they don't realize that capitalism needs poor people, period, to work. And that actually the oppression of people and dividing them based on white and Black or Hispanic and white or Hispanic and Black is to keep us from understanding and unifying and knowing that we need changes in our government. And as long as they can keep us all believing lies about ourselves, then we're going to continue to not educate ourselves and not do things like what this book is doing, which is getting deeper and actually studying the history.
Right.
Because people don't know what's going on. They really don't. Like, they believe that what you guys were talking about earlier, which was that watered down history.
Hey, excuse me, right? Hey, let me give you this quote from former President Lyndon B. Johnson. And I quote, "If you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you picking his pocket. Hell, give him somebody to look down on and he'll empty his pockets for you."
Yep.
And that's, and he said that way back, you know what I mean? And this is exactly what Trump did. He took the white, bright top 10 and ran with it. You know what I mean? Whatever they had problems with, he amplified it. Like he felt their pain. Like he actually was one of them. You know what I'm saying? And he sold. That's what he do. That's his hustle. You know, man, he sold it. You know, I bet you he wouldn't let one of his average fans, he probably wouldn't let him nowhere near Mar-a-Lago. You know what I'm saying? Not
right.
A chance. But they look at him like he's just like them.
Did you see the article I posted where he said that he was bemused? They said he was bemused by the riots, but he said that they were not aesthetically pleasing and they were low class. So he basically calling them poor white trash. Like, y'all dying for this dude, and he looks at y'all as poor white trash.
That's how he get down, man. That's how he get down. Man, they spreading feces all over the Capitol, man. Come on, man. Come on.
That's
man.
That savage caveman shit.
And they let him leave, man. Yeah, let him walk right out.
Pause. Are you literally saying that they put excrement on the Capitol?
What?
Yes, they did.
What? Come on, man. Pipe bombs, man. Man. Okay. And they just, but it might get uglier before it get better because they
definitely
there's still a lot of gripes out there.
I think they're trying to plan something around the inauguration, definitely.
Yeah. Just think, you got to think now. Somebody else come after Trump with a little more sense, a little more savvy, because that's what they say. Like at first it get quelled, then like 10 years down the line, they said that's what happened in Germany. The first German uprising with the Nazis, it was quelled the first time. but they had a voice in government. And then 10 years later, they overtook that government, you know, and everybody swept it aside, kept, you know, sweeping it aside. And the next thing you know, it's too late, you know, and
Right,
it was getting
here
close to
comes
that.
Hitler.
Right, it was getting close to that, you know. He was getting real authoritarian. He kept laughing and joking. I think I'm gonna go 12 years, you know. Then I'm just kidding. I can't do that. But you know what I'm saying? But it's like you putting that bug in people's ear, and you know, he surrounding himself with yes men, and, you know what I'm saying? And he not hearing no dissenting voice. Everybody is agreeing with you, you know, and that'll drive you crazy if everybody agreeing with me. But if that's what you like, that's crazy, man. Yes, yeah, do that. Come on, man. You get corrupted. It's just, I mean, can you imagine? Everybody was asking him to quell the violence, and he was like, "I'm gonna wait 5 more minutes." You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
because he wanted them to take Pence out.
Yeah, you know how much power that. You know what? Nah, I ain't gonna say nothing. Remember, everybody was like, "He need to speak." Joe Biden spoke before he did. Then he came on and spoke for like I think a minute and 1 second, and then that was that. Told him that he loved him and everything. You know, that's a lot of power to have, especially in the wrong hands.
Right.
But going back to what what Katie was saying, I didn't feel bad for them. But looking at the video where, I don't know if anyone else saw the video where Trump's family was watching, and Trump was watching everything unfold from some type of covered tent that they had, and they were just gleeful, you know, with everything that was happening. And I just looked at the protesters and I'm like, you all don't even realize that you're being used. You know, like, he would not associate with you. You know, this is the elite using the lower classes for, you know, their goals.
Dirty work.
Yeah, and it was so
Yeah.
pitiful. I just thought it was really pitiful, especially when I saw like Trump's children and, you know, their spouses there just really gleeful and laughing and saying thank you for, you know, um, for showing up like this. I just thought it was really, really pitiful to see, you know, because I said, you don't realize that you're actually getting used in this situation.
Right.
He treats them like pawns. They're disposable. People don't see how completely disposable they are. He does not care.
Right.
Mm-mm.
What do y'all so remember when Mehrsa talked about the businesses in the Black community, and she was saying that the most successful ones were illegal. So when she starts talking about the crack epidemic, I wanted to ask the question, do you think that they were pushing the war on drugs because they were trying to lock Black men up, essentially just for the drugs? Or do you think that that was because they wanted to shut down the business enterprise, because these men were actually making a lot of money and it did become a business enterprise in the Black community?
I don't think I'm gonna go in first. I don't think uh, they was making a lot of money, but it allowed them to incarcerate. They really wiped out a whole generation of Black men, you know, and they did it. They bought, they bought that in. Like I said, this is all repeated. They did it with because, like I said, Nixon started the war on drugs. He started that. They got that crack in there, and they started the war on drugs. Then when they went and bombed. When they went into Afghanistan, they got control of them poppy fields. And then now they had the opioid epidemic. That's a direct correlation between them going to Afghanistan, establishing the military, so them drugs can go in and out. That's what they doing in Afghanistan. That's in 2001. Flash forward to 2010, America's in a full-blown opioid epidemic. which they was in the 70s, but it was predominantly black and brown. But now it's predominantly white. So now it's, now it's in crazy proportions. You know what I mean? They bring them back to life though. You get Narcan and all that. And now incarceration is not the answer. Treatment is the answer. Incarceration was the answer for crack. Treatment is the incarceration for these opioid addicts. Sackler family is the biggest drug cartel. I don't know why they don't never call them a cartel. The Sackler family is a cartel. The Oxycontin boys, that's a cartel over any of these Mexican cats that they make you think that they running shit. Them Sacklers is the ones that running shit. They the ones that get all that money because they give it to the MoMAs and all them institutions, and they give them all that power. And then all they got to do is settle out for $10 billion, like a Boeing, or you know what I mean? And Boeing just sent another 737 up in another plane crash in Jakarta just this week. And they just approved them to get back on American and United Airlines. That's insane. Them planes, man, I'm not catching a 737. I'm going to try to my best not to, but I'm just saying it's insane how they allow this to happen. I couldn't believe they just, man, it was another, I don't know if y'all read about it. It was another plane crash in Jakarta. Another 737, those same flights. And it's just crazy. I don't know if I go off topic, but yeah, I think it was more about the incarceration because that was a whole generation of black men. A lot of people that I knew and grew up with that's dead, in jail, never knew their families, never set an example for their kids, and it was just it was a vacuum. It was a vacuum like the 80s and 90s, particularly the 80s, but the 80s and 90s, man, that was devastating, and we won't recover. That's something else we'll have to recover from, let alone all the other stuff we have to recover from.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
I was
Repeat
gonna
the
say
question.
probably just.
No, go first, Jessica.
No, I was gonna say probably just to get black men locked up for the business side of it too, because they're making money. But Alan pointed out that they did bring the drugs in. Well, really just to catch them, but yeah, they are making money and it's not taxable, so that money's not going to the government. So I was thinking that they definitely say, well, if you're not going to make money that's going to benefit us, then besides all the other reasons.
Right, because a lot of them, they were getting them under RICO the majority of the time.
I'm sorry, DeAndre, you can go ahead.
Okay. Yoshunda, can you repeat the question again?
Can somebody repeat it for me? Because I don't remember exactly how I work. Like once I ask it, it's pretty much out there in the atmosphere.
She was asking, do we think that they push crack and drugs on black men just to lock them up for dog? I just had it and I lost it. Lock them up because a lot of black men had their own businesses or enterprises. Do you think it was to lock them up so that they couldn't do enterprise, or because they just wanted to? I forgot the other reason. I think it's just to lock them up.
I kind of heard what she said. It just was after listening to people. I kind of forgot the question because I was listening to people's in-depth answers. But to answer the question, I say it was both, because they wanted to, by eliminating any and every economic advantage as possible for black men, they were able to gain as much economic control as they were able to gain. And So by pushing the drugs in the community, we're and catching people for selling them. Number one, if people know that this is a high drug community or high crime community, what's the probability of them coming there to shop with the businesses? Because they know that they may they're in a territory, they're in a danger zone, so they may get robbed, they may get shot, or some type of harm may come to them. Also, like I said, eliminating eliminating any way for black people to economically prosper, because if we're economically prospering, they're not able to capitalize and continue to regulate that level of capitalism on black people. So I think it was a little bit of, I think it was both. They wanted to push people out and they wanted to eliminate any economic advantage that they could get, that we could gain whatsoever.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
4 more minutes.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to touch on was the building and construction of the public housing projects, and how they were basically used to maintain segregation in the cities. And they talked about how they basically strategically were isolating Black people into these projects. And it makes me think about Goody Mob. You guys remember that song that I'm talking about?
Cell therapy.
Yeah, cell therapy. When it's like, what was the exact quote? I can't remember it.
Oh, you talking about the CeeLo line when he said
Yeah.
every now and then I wonder if they put gates up to keep crime out and keep us in.
Right, that one. So yeah, it made me think about that. So psychologically, what kind of effect do you think that has had on the Black community, with people having to continuously be isolated in these housing projects, looking at these walls or gates or fences that have been erected essentially either to keep us from leaving or for whatever reason?
I think it was another plan along with mass incarceration and along with the war on drugs. I just think it was a part of a systematic coordinated effort, because that's what they created them for. That's what caused gentrification in the first place. That was the purpose for gentrification. And it's something that Nick Cannon said, that gentrification and genocide are the same thing in my eyes. Because if you look at the history of a lot of these housing projects, look at the overall damage that was done. Many of them got torn down, and they got redeveloped and rebuilt and refurbished. Like Yoshunda, and those of you that's from Georgia area, you know about the East Lake Meadows area in Atlanta. They got shut down prior to the same year as the Olympics. Well, prior to them shutting that down, that housing project had 18, the housing project East Lake Meadows in Atlanta had the crime rate there was 18 times the national average. They had a $30 million drug trade, and there were murders and killings almost everywhere. The clip is on YouTube. You can go and check it out for yourself. And you had other projects like Techwood Homes. I had an aunt that I've never met that used to live in Techwood. And the stories that were passed down to me from the family members that knew her was that Techwood was one of the most dangerous places in not just Atlanta, but in all of the world. And if you look at places like New Orleans, you know about the groups like No Limit and Master P and Cash Money that come from like the Calliope and the Magnolia, and how dangerous those places were, because for a long time, New Orleans was the murder capital of the United States. The point is that because we already the self-hatred had already been instilled in us, and the leaders were taken away, the drugs were pushed in. So all of this was a systematic, coordinated effort to come about. And I think that right there was that was another component and another strategy and a tactic that they used to further advance what they had already put into place.
So this is just a question for you guys. Do you think that the fences and the HUD housing and all that kind of stuff was actually meant to bring more division to the Black community, like a us and them, like they live there, I live here kind of mentality to separate the Black community even further?
I think, well, honestly, I kind of think so, because if you lived in places like that, you know how you know what goes on there. That type of stuff does happen. So I think yes, because like I said, we already had this self-hate and this envy of one another that was, of course, instilled in us through slavery, and it followed us for a long time. And I think that when the guns and the drugs came into our community, and when they came openly, because one thing about living in those environments, it's so easy to get access to drugs. It's easy to get access to guns. You can find guns literally on back porches in grass. You can find drug. You can almost every other house in almost every other apartment complex, every other house is a house that is filled with drugs everywhere. So it's no it's no accident. Yes, Katie, to answer your question, that's exactly what it was made for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think in talking about the psychology behind all of that, it goes to say a lot about what forms a lot of hopelessness in situations like that. One of the reasons why I was doing the neighborhood cleanups is because there is a lot of psychology behind that. When you come out of your house or home every day and see trash and you see the blight and you see the deterioration, it does a lot to your psyche. So I think those things were and have been deliberate. When we get into talking about the slumlords and how they charge these crazy rent rates for buildings and houses that should really be condemned, but they're allowed to get away with it. Or how we have these crazy utility bills, essentially, in the city of Griffin, which they know that a certain population cannot afford to pay. You know, it's all deliberate and strategic in that sense.
I have a question. If anybody knows this answer, maybe not. It's a random question. But we were talking about housing, and I remember in the chapter when I saw Andrew Cuomo's name, I was like, Governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo? And saw that he was a secretary for HUD. I thought that was very interesting. Does anybody know if he's actually made, well, now that he's governor, if he's devoted anything to actually improving housing and development in New York, or?
Yeah, I have no idea. That's something I would have
Gotcha.
to.
That was his father, though, that they were referring to in the book.
Oh, okay. I was like, that was a little weird because I was trying to date his age.
Yeah, George Romney is Mitt Romney's father, right?
I have no clue.
I think so.
But I know in the book, the Cuomo they're talking about is his the current governor's father. Because I think that was like back in the 70s, right, Jessica?
I
think in the book it was like referring to like the period of the 70s.
It was in Clinton's administration, I think, where he was.
I I still,
No,
yeah.
so if it was Clinton, it was Bill Clinton. It was in the later years, 90s, 2000, 90s, because
Okay. Maybe it
yeah, it was
was.
talking about Clinton, but it doesn't give me a date.
Is
Oh,
anybody else seeing how all these people are related?
yeah.
Like all the current people that are in office right now, it was their daddies and their granddaddies and their cousins and
Yeah,
their uncles and stuff.
Right.
yeah,
If that's
yeah.
not proof, if that's not proof of some generational systematic oppression, I don't know what is. Just putting that out there. I don't know how
Very
people
true.
don't see that.
And I didn't realize that some positions, of course, are bought with money or whatever. They were talking about the secretary, somebody of education who recently resigned, and I looked up her net worth for some reason, and she was like 54 billion. I said, "How is she worth 54 billion dollars and she's over education and nothing?" And my mom was like, "Oh, that's somebody Trump put in." I said,
Are
"Oh,
y'all talking about Betsy DeVos?
I think that's her name."
Betsy DeVos did education for Trump, and she was awful. She never had a public school education. She went to private schools her entire life. Yeah, it's awful.
That's it.
And she wanted to defund public school education.
Wow.
Yeah, and Jessica, I have to.
Charter schools. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was gonna say, Jessica, I have to correct myself. That was, if it was Clinton's, then it was the current. It is Andrew. I was thinking about Mario Cuomo was his dad, but yeah,
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 so I just looked at
that was Andrew.
Not a problem. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have to look that up because I want to see what he's done with it. If he was to see what he's really about.
Yeah. But I thought it was interesting that they said like the Fair Housing Act only, it only took discrimination off of it got to kind of like say, okay, well, we resolved that issue. You cannot legally discriminate, but it didn't actually do anything to kind of, solve the problem, even work towards true integration or helping, Black, brown communities, move up and move out into different areas, because it was more to their advantage just for them to stay, segregated. And nobody really was a fan of integration when it comes to housing. So, the legislation just kind of puts it off on the books and say, hey, we did that. It's a checklist kind of item, towards civil rights. But
right. And I'm not. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Jessica.
No, go ahead. You're good.
I'm finished.
No, I was just gonna say right, and I don't even know how much of a difference it would have made because kind of jumping ahead a little bit with the mortgage and the loan lending and stuff. Well, of course that was public housing versus trying to buy a house, but I don't know what kind of difference it would have made. We definitely still were kept out of areas we wouldn't qualify for. Anyway, so I don't know. It's just kind of it really doesn't matter where we stay kind of thing, and yeah, if we try to get a house where there's a lot of public housing where where they push us, if we still try to get a house there, we're still going to end up trying to come up out of that. We're still going to end up paying a lot more for it. So really wasn't a win-win in any situation with the legislation going on.
The other thing that I was looking at in the book was when Carter was trying to focus on the minority businesses. And I think it says a lot when you see this pattern throughout history, whenever they are trying to do something to help small businesses or minorities, that it is basically taken over by already wealthy white people. When they were talking about how the SBA's set-asides were controversial because 60 Minutes did a story revealing that the grant recipients were mostly fronts for white construction firms. So then we think about how the whole situation went with the PPP loans and who they went to. Like, it's crazy how no matter what gets set up for our benefit, that it's always co-opted by wealthy white people.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you, but you have to understand the reason it's like that is because it was set up to be like that. America's a rigged economy for the very people, like you mentioned, that took over that.
And reading this chapter kind of made me realize they aren't as smart as we think they are because they make a lot of bad decisions, and we end up they kind of use us to kind of bail themselves out of it, like with the banks and the mortgages and stuff like that. And it's just like I don't know. I realize that they make a lot of bad decisions, and we end up taking the brunt of it. And I'm like, I mean, I guess I don't know how a government is supposed to be ran, but yeah, it doesn't make sense. Also, that you would think that you could run a country without using all of its citizens. Like, if not, I think that the benefit of uplifting all of your citizens would not be better for your country. Like, for you to, well, like y'all said, you do need poor people for capitalism, but I don't know. I just think it would be more of a benefit if you didn't try to keep some people out of a hole, but maybe not.
But I guess it goes back to, those in power try to fight to maintain that power. And so whenever you have these laws that are put into place, there are always some type of loophole, or something where, those at the top still remain at the top or have an advantage in some type of way. Because I think even they said that wasn't that Wall Street would have been looked at as like a disadvantaged community, and just how crazy that you're thinking that that's the center of where stock trade is in this country, and they would have been looked at as a disadvantaged community and taking advantage of some of the loopholes that those laws created for them. But I think that's just, and it goes back to again how you see generation after generation of these politicians, the different the fathers, and then you see their sons coming to power again, because if it was truly set up the way that it was supposed to, you would have more of an equal playing field. But what you have is those in power remain in power, and they create laws that are advantageous for them to keep other people down and oppressed.
Anybody else? I will say one thing after this chapter. It makes me look at Jimmy Carter in a completely different light. um, Especially with the way that he fought against increasing the minimum wage, and he fought against government aid, and essentially pushing those agencies to focus on minority businesses, but only picking the most successful businesses to provide assistance to. So I don't know how you guys felt about Jimmy Carter before, but did that change your perspective of him after reading this chapter?
It did. It changed my perspective of Clinton, of Carter, of Bush, which well, actually that really didn't change much. But yeah, I was just like, I'm always looking at. It seems like the legacies of the past four presidents before Trump. They always stand together in solidarity and all this and that, and they seem to be good people. And even Obama, has his moments, and I'm just like, do each of these people realize that the system that they keep pushing, or are they just going off of what they think they know or what they're taught? Or, but yeah, some of them I definitely know it's intentional. So yeah, it changed my viewpoint.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would say it did change. It changed my view, but and I think I've heard him say that he's grown over the years. So I think we just have to keep in mind that, a lot of times we are given sound bites and snapshots of people. And, Jimmy Carter has become almost like this, American icon, grandfatherly like figure, but even he admitted that at times he's been on the wrong side of history, and so I think we have to just keep that in mind. And that's why we have to just continue to hold each other accountable, but yeah, sometimes as you keep reading, you're like, oh, I wish I didn't know that. Because it definitely changes your viewpoint. But like I said, I think he has said that, in the past, he's made mistakes and has, wouldn't make those same mistakes again if he had to do over again.
That's a good point.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
Well, question. Since we were looking at a snapshot, and like you said, he does realize he's made mistakes and he's grown. Is there anything that you think once they do realize their mistakes they can do now to try to change it, or because they technically, or do you feel like they technically have no power to do anything anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think they had the most power when they were actually sitting in office. I mean, seemed like that would have been the best time to make those changes.
Yeah, but even now, though, you still have the power of who you are. Because the internet, if you actually took a stand and said some things and did some things, like if Carter said, did an interview with somebody and said, I made a mistake when I did this. Yeah, this is what's wrong with the economy. Yeah, this is why we're still divided. That would be front page news. Like, so you still have influence. Let me put it that way. And if you do something, I feel like they could do something with that influence if they wanted to, unless they're just too comfortable or they feel like they don't have that influence.
Right. I agree. They still have that, it's not as formal as when they were in office, you know. But like I said, you have to always look at people through the lens that they were taught and through their social constructs. And so even looking at Jimmy Carter, he was still born, when was he born? Like in the 19 teens, 20s, whenever. But at that time, looking, even though he had somewhat progressive views then, but he also would have been taught that there's a limit, that maybe integration wasn't integration wasn't such a great thing, that the races should not be together, so I just look at people through that lens as well. And that like you said, I think later as you grow, then it is important that you come out and you say that you were wrong and that you have a different point of view. And I think it can still change some things.
Yeah, he was born in 1924. You're right.
So that was a long time ago, almost 100 years ago. And so he would have had a different view, of how life should be. So, we always have to look at people through that lens as well. Even though we know it's wrong, they are deeply entrenched in this mindset. I mean, think about what we're seeing now. They're deeply entrenched that they are on the right side of what's going on. It's scary though.
I agree. Got about 10 minutes left. That was pretty much all the questions I had. Anything else you guys want to discuss?
Hey, have we decided what we're reading next?
No, we haven't. I'm still waiting on some people to submit their suggestions. Sandra, Jessica, Katie. I'd appreciate it if you had any books in mind and you like uplifting books for us to read, to submit them in the or post them on our page, our Afro Chat page.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to research because I know nothing about these books until y'all brought them to my life. So yeah, I will try to have some to you by the end of today. But yeah, the only thing is chapter just I thought it was crazy that they tried to invest in black banking again, but I don't know if they knew the reasons it didn't work. But like she was saying in the book, it can't work in the ghetto, and they just kept doing ineffective things and trying to basically say it's the bank's fault. No, I don't have enough circulation, and the way that they were restricted with what was considered a minority bank, I was just like, man, history really is doomed to repeat itself over and over and over.
Katie, Sandra, DeAndre, anything else before we conclude this discussion?
No, I'll get the suggestion to you though. So.
I will have to do some research for uplifting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need a change.
Do we only want to do nonfiction, or would we like to do some fiction?
I think fiction is cool.
I was gonna say, is it have to be centered around culture or does it matter? Gotcha.
I mean, I would prefer